let's step into one of the most fascinating movements in modern drama, theatre of the absurd. This form of theatre emerged after the Second World War, capturing the disillusionment and chaos that followed years of destruction. That historical context has been asked in exam, so do note it carefully. The phrase itself refers to a group of European playwrights whose works explored the absurd nature of human existence, a fact that has also been questioned in exam. The plays reflect the existentialist philosophy that life has no ultimate meaning or purpose. In this theatre, logic dissolves, language breaks down, and human communication often fails completely, and that theme of communication breakdown has been asked in exam. Now, who gave this movement its name? The term theatre of the absurd was coined by Martin Esslin in his 1960 essay, a detail that has appeared in exam. Esslin described the absurd as the condition of having no purpose, no goal, and no objective, and this very definition has been tested in exam as well. In his essay, Esslin identified 4 key playwrights: Samuel Beckett, Arthur Adamov, Eugene Ionesco, and Jean Genet, and this list has been asked in exam. In later editions of his study, he also added Harold Pinter, whose works like The Birthday Party fit perfectly into the absurdist framework. The absurd dramatists shared one central concern. They believed that human life is essentially meaningless, echoing the philosophy of Albert Camus, who described existence as fundamentally absurd. Their plays often reject traditional storytelling, plot, or resolution. For instance, Samuel Beckett's Waiting for Godot removes conventional plot altogether, presenting 2 tramps endlessly waiting for someone who never arrives, a timeless, circular structure that has been mentioned in exam. The sense of repetition and stagnation captures the futility of human hope. In Ionesco's The Bald Soprano, the characters speak in cliches and nonsense, exposing how language itself has lost its ability to convey meaning, and this example has also been asked in exam. Here, meaningless speech ironically becomes the play's very message, suggesting that meaninglessness itself can carry meaning, another subtle idea that has been seen in exam. Typically, absurdist plays end not with a resolution but with silence, an emblem of emptiness, futility, or quiet acceptance. This idea of ending in silence has also been tested in exam. Instead of dramatic conflict or clear motivation, the audience sees futile actions without purpose, characters drifting without defined roles, and dialogues that go nowhere. These characteristics, purposeless action, lack of conflict, and characters in stasis, have all been asked in exam, so make sure you memorize them. What makes these plays unique is their combination of comic surface and serious depth. Audiences often laugh at the absurd behavior of the characters, yet feel the profound despair beneath it, a mirror of the modern human condition. Martin Esslin explained that the absurd dramatists were not merely showing nonsense for shock value. They were expressing the truth of human existence in a world stripped of certainties. Some of the most famous examples of this theatre include Beckett's Endgame, Pinter's The Birthday Party, and Ionesco's The Rhinoceros, and yes, these examples have all been asked in exam. So, in essence, theatre of the absurd reflects the existential human condition, people trapped in meaningless routines, searching for connection, and questioning their purpose in a silent universe. The laughter fades, but the unease remains, and that's exactly why the absurd theatre still speaks to us today. Let's step into the strange, quiet, and deeply thought-provoking world of Samuel Beckett, one of the greatest playwrights of the 20th century and a central figure of theatre of the absurd. Beckett was born in Ireland in 1906, but he eventually settled in Paris, where he lived for most of his life. That very fact that he was an Irish playwright who made Paris his home has been asked in exam. During the dark years of World War II, Beckett supported himself as a simple farm worker while secretly serving in the French underground resistance against the Nazis. That courage and detachment from material comfort later found their way into his bleak yet compassionate view of human existence. After the war, Beckett began to write in French, believing the language forced him to write more simply and precisely. From this creative period came his famous French trilogy Molloy, Malone Dies, and The Unnameable, all of which have been mentioned in exam. These novels are sparse, introspective, and deeply philosophical, exploring identity, memory, and the act of storytelling itself. But Beckett's name truly became immortal with his play Waiting for Godot, published in 1952 and performed the following year. This play's title and its first performance date have both been asked in exam. Waiting for Godot gained immediate success, stunning audiences with its simplicity and mystery. Beckett later translated it himself into English, and that self-translation is another detail that has appeared in exam. At first glance, Godot seems to be about two men, Vladimir and Estragon, waiting endlessly for someone who never arrives. Yet beneath that absurd surface lies a profound question: what does it mean to live, to wait, and to hope in a meaningless world? This play became the defining work of what critic Martin Esslin later called the theatre of the absurd, a term that, yes, has been tested in exam. Beckett's plays are known for minimal plots, existential themes, and a strange sense of dark humor. The characters often occupy a bare space, trapped, confused, but still somehow persisting. Beckett once said that he was interested not in people's actions, but in their being their condition of simply existing. After Godot, Beckett continued to experiment with even greater simplicity. His later plays include Endgame, Krapp's Last Tape, and Happy Days, each exploring isolation and futility through strikingly original stage images. All these titles, Endgame, Krapp's Last Tape, and Happy Days, have been asked in exam, so keep them handy. In Endgame, life becomes a repetitive ritual in a post-apocalyptic room. In Krapp's Last Tape, an old man listens to recordings of his younger self. And in Happy Days, a woman buried in sand clings to optimism as the world quite literally buries her. Beckett's dramatic vision grew increasingly minimalist, using silence and rhythm as much as dialogue. His short play Rockaby, which has also been asked in exam, is just a woman in a rocking chair whispering fragments of memory. Yet, even in the stillness, Beckett captured the essence of being human, our endurance, our loneliness, and our unending search for meaning. He also wrote many short prose pieces and novels, such as Murphy and Watt, both of which have been referenced in exam. These works show his fascination with absurd routines and the mind's struggle to make sense of existence. His earlier collection, More Pricks Than Kicks, published in 1934, is another text you should note. That title has also been asked in exam. Throughout his life, Beckett remained quietly dedicated to his craft, shunning publicity and living modestly in Paris. In 1969, he was awarded the Nobel Prize in Literature, a key fact that has been asked in exam. The Nobel Committee praised him for transforming the despair of modern man into artistic greatness, turning emptiness into poetry. Beckett's later works became even shorter and quieter, some lasting only a minute or two, but each one captured his lifelong theme, the tragedy and comedy of human existence. Today, Beckett stands as both a modernist and absurdist pioneer. His influence stretches across literature, theatre, and philosophy, from existentialism to postmodern thought. He showed that meaning can emerge even in silence, and that humor and hopelessness can coexist on the same empty stage. Samuel Beckett died in 1989, leaving behind a legacy that changed the very language of drama. His plays remind us that life may be absurd, but art, like endurance, gives it form, voice, and dignity. Samuel Beckett's Waiting for Godot is a tragicomedy in 2 acts. Blending humor and despair, was written by Beckett in French and later translated by himself into English. That unique fact that it was first published in French in 1952 has been asked in exam. The play was first performed in 1953, and that premiere marked Beckett's instant rise to theatrical fame. Waiting for Godot was unlike anything audiences had seen before. When it premiered in Paris, people were initially stunned, some confused, some deeply moved. It ran for over 300 performances. eventually being hailed as a landmark of modern drama and a defining work of what came to be called the theatre of the absurd. This very connection between Godot and the theatre of the absurd born out of the chaos and disillusionment following World War II has been noted in exam. Now, what makes the theatre of the absurd so distinctive? The word absurd literally means out of harmony. In these plays, logic, structure, and clear meaning dissolve, mirroring the confusion of post-war humanity. Beckett's stage rejected traditional storytelling, no linear plot, no clear beginning, middle, or end, only circular waiting, empty dialogue, and human uncertainty. At its core, Waiting for Godot is about two tramps, Vladimir called Didi and Estragon called Gogo, waiting endlessly for someone named Godot who never arrives. This simple situation becomes a profound exploration of human existence. The play opens and ends with Estragon's words, a symmetry that has been asked in exam. The setting is stark, a barren landscape with a single tree, suggesting timelessness and emptiness. The very first line, "Nothing to be done," has been asked in exam, and it sets the mood for everything that follows: futility, repetition, and hope that never materializes. As they wait, Vladimir and Estragon bicker, joke, attempt to pass time, and even consider hanging themselves, yet never act on it. Their indecision mirrors humanity's own paralysis in a meaningless world. Soon, two other characters enter: Pozzo, a pompous man, and Lucky, his enslaved servant. Pozzo commands and humiliates Lucky, symbolizing systems of power and control. Lucky's famous monologue, a nonsensical torrent of fragmented ideas about God, man, and knowledge, reflects the breakdown of reason in the modern age. The audience is left bewildered, realizing that communication itself has lost coherence. Later, a boy appears as a messenger, saying that Godot will not come today, but surely tomorrow. The boy's brief appearance offers false hope, and here's a key exam point. It is Vladimir who questions the boy at the end of both acts. This detail has been specifically asked in exam, so don't miss it. The act ends as darkness falls. The two men decide to leave, but remain still. That moment of motionless indecision perfectly embodies the absurd. Now, in Act 2, the setting remains the same, except the tree now has a few leaves, hinting at the illusion of change. Time passes, but nothing truly alters. Vladimir reflects on the endless repetition of misery, while Estragon continues to forget everything, even their past conversations. Pozzo and Lucky return, but the situation has reversed. Pozzo is now blind and Lucky is mute. The roles have shifted, yet the suffering remains the same, a metaphor for the randomness and cruelty of existence. Pozzo even declares that time does not exist, erasing the idea of progress or meaning. Vladimir grows increasingly desperate, questioning the purpose of waiting at all. In one of the play's most haunting lines, asked in exam, he says, "Astride of a grave and a difficult birth." Down in the hole, lingeringly, the gravedigger puts on the forceps. This chilling image compresses the entire human life. Between birth and death, nothing but a fleeting moment. Later, the boy returns again with the same message. Godot will not come today, but perhaps tomorrow. The repetition turns hope into irony and faith into futility. By the end, Vladimir observes bitterly, "They give birth astride a grave," another key line that has been asked in exam. Once again, the two men decide to leave, yet remain rooted to the same spot, the play's final gesture of paralysis and absurdity. And yes, that final indecisive moment has been repeatedly tested in exam, through its circular structure, broken dialogue, and barren imagery. Waiting for Godot presents life as a static condition, a representation without development, as one critic put it, and this observation has also been noted in exam. Its incoherent speech, its silence, and its endless waiting all mirror the despair of a world stripped of meaning. Ultimately, Godot never arrives, and perhaps That's the point. Waiting for Godot is not about Godot at all, but about us, our longing for purpose, our fear of emptiness, and our need to keep waiting even when there's nothing to wait for. Let's move into the strange, haunting world of Samuel Beckett, one of the most powerful voices of post-war theatre. His play Endgame, written originally in French as Fin de Partie, was produced and published in 1957, and this very year has been asked in exam. Beckett himself translated it into English, a testament to his meticulous control over tone and rhythm. The entire play unfolds within a single bare room featuring only 4 characters: Ham, Clove, Nag and Nell, a detail that's also been mentioned in exam. The setting is stark. 2 small windows, grey light filtering through, and an atmosphere of utter desolation. Nothing moves outside. The world seems dead. Ham, blind and confined to a wheelchair, dominates the stage as the master, while Clove, his lame servant, moves restlessly around but can never sit down. Their relationship is tense, ironic and circular. Ham commands, Clove resists, yet neither can live without the other. This dependency defines the play's emotional core. Nag and Nell, Ham's elderly parents, live literally inside 2 ash bins. Their scenes offer both comic relief and tragic reflection. They reminisce about old times, joke weakly, and try to kiss each other, but even that simple act ends in futility. Their physical confinement becomes a powerful image of memory and decay. At the beginning, Clove looks out the window and reports that nothing is alive. From that moment onward, the play moves in a loop: repetition, routine, and resignation. Beckett's spare setting and dense stage directions are deliberate. Every pause, every silence matters. The theme of power and dependence runs deep. Ham's blindness symbolizes moral and emotional emptiness, while Clove's paralysis reflects the inability to break free. At one point, Ham asks bitterly, "Can there be misery loftier?" And yes, that very line has been asked in exam. As the play continues, Nell dies quietly in her bin, unnoticed by Nag, who continues talking to her corpse, one of the most hauntingly absurd moments in modern drama. Ham delivers a soliloquy reflecting on the emptiness of existence, on memory, and on death, his words echoing with cold despair. In the final scene, Clove prepares to leave, finally ready to step outside into whatever remains of the world. Ham sits motionless, alone, his face covered, perhaps dead or perhaps simply waiting. Nothing is resolved. The curtain falls on stillness. That's Endgame Beckett's vision of life as a cycle of dependence, futility, and endurance, where ending and beginning are one and the same. Now let's turn to another of Beckett's minimalist masterpieces, Krapp's Last Tape, a 1-act monodrama written in 1958, produced and published the following year. Both those dates have been asked in exam, so keep them in mind. The play features a single character, Krapp, a 70-ish man sitting alone at his desk in near darkness. A white beam of light illuminates the desk, while the rest of the stage remains black, a powerful image of isolation. Krapp spends his evenings listening to old tape recordings of himself, reliving fragments of his past. He's been recording 1 tape every year on his birthday, chronicling his thoughts and memories. Tonight, he replays the tape made when he was 39. The younger Krapp, full of confidence, speaks of plans and dreams, calling his earlier self naive and foolish. Yet, the older Krapp can't resist replaying that same voice again and again. It's the paradox of memory, painful, irresistible, and impossible to escape. Early in the play, Krapp fumbles with bananas, makes a joke about bowel trouble, and consults his ledger tiny comic details that contrast with the loneliness underneath. He listens to his own younger voice describing a romantic encounter by a peer, and this tender moment captivates him. He rewinds and listens twice, silently overcome. As the tape continues, the younger Krapp mentions his mother's death, his failed book, and his ambition. The older Krapp, cynical and broken, mutters responses, scoffs at his youthful ideals, yet can't look away. He's drawn to the voice he mocks, perhaps because it's the last echo of who he once was. In the end, Krapp takes a blank tape, tries to record again, but gives up. He sits motionless, listening once more to the memory of love, the voice of his younger self. The play ends in silence, the tape spinning endlessly, the man and machine locked in a cycle of memory and regret. Beckett's Krapp's last tape explores time, identity, and decay. It's about the distance between who we were and who we've become, and how art, memory, and technology preserve what we can never reclaim. Let's turn to one of the most haunting and intellectually challenging works of modern literature, Samuel Beckett's trilogy, which includes Molloy, Malone Dies, and The Unnameable. These novels, written between 1951 and 1958, represent Beckett's most profound exploration of identity, language, and the limits of human existence. The trilogy as a whole has been asked in exam, so do note that carefully. The first novel, Molloy, was written in French and later translated into English by Beckett himself. It's structured as two monologues, one by Molloy and the other by his supposed pursuer, Moran, and this dual voice structure has appeared in Exam. Molloy narrates his strange wandering journey in search of his mother, while Moran's pursuit of him gradually breaks down into madness and physical collapse. The story moves from the outer world of travel to the inner world of disintegration. Beneath its dark humor and absurd events, Beckett weaves echoes of Homer's Odyssey, a journey not toward home, but toward the void. Then comes Malone Dies, the second novel in Beckett's French prose trilogy. Here, the narrator Malone lies dying in his bed, surrounded only by his possessions, and begins to write stories as a way to pass time and preserve his fading sense of self. But the stories collapse into themselves, blurring the line between creator and creation. Beckett uses Malone's storytelling to satirize the creative process itself, turning writing into a form of slow, philosophical disintegration. Like Molloy, this novel is Beckett's reflection on identity and the futility of control, and of course, Beckett himself translated it into English. Finally, we reach The Unnameable, the third and most abstract novel of the trilogy. Here, plot and character almost disappear entirely. The narrator is disembodied, speaking from inside a kind of jar, a voice trapped in endless self-reflection. Through shifting identities, Mahood, Worm, and others, Beckett shows how the human mind invents names and narratives just to survive the terror of nothingness. The book ends with Beckett's most famous and paradoxical line, "I can't go on, I'll go on." That very line has been asked in exam, and it perfectly sums up Beckett's vision, a world where endurance becomes the only form of meaning. Across these three novels, Beckett strips language down to its bare bones. He replaces traditional plot and action with inner monologue, repetition, and silence. Together, Molloy, Malone Dies, and The Unnameable form not just a trilogy, but a philosophical journey from body to mind, from identity to absence, from speech to the silence beyond words. Beckett's trilogy remains one of the most powerful expressions of modern existential thought, tragic, comic, and unforgettably human.